Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. As always, if you'd like to make a comment, please do so. There's a little thing down there on the right-hand side of your bottom of your screen. You can tap on it and leave your comments, or if you want to ask a question, that's also fine. We go out on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So please, send in your questions now if you'd like to. If you'd like to ask Keith or I any questions. Now, unfortunately, from somebody's point of view, must be somebody saying, what? Not again. But VAR is still making headlines effectively. I got many messages during the week, but this was one of them. And I was quite amazed by this as well. And Keith, maybe you'll come in on this. Why is VAR only used from the semi-final stages on of the Carabao Cup, which is effectively, for those who don't know what the Carabao is, it's the League Cup in England. So why are they not using VAR in the earlier rounds when it is available? What's the problem?
I can only think that they're trying to keep the costs down and manpower. I mean, it's amazing because, of course, it's the same in the FA Cup. When we look at the FA Challenge Cup, we have, again, VAR running in some games and not in others. And that, for me, is the FA Cup should be all or nothing. And, of course, I suspect that because you've got non-league teams up to certain stages of the competition, but we're going right through to the semi-final. And, I think at the moment, it's probably a good thing because sad to say that the way VAR is operating in the English game, in the English Premier League, it's miles away from the standard that we expect. And I listened this week again to Howard Webb, and with all good intentions, he is trying to give an insight into the conversations that exist in going through the decision-making process.
So just on that, Keith, you think it's a financial issue?
I think it's both. I think it's financial, and I think it's also a manpower issue.
Okay, well let's just develop that a little bit, and let's use our dear friends in opposition, as it were, rugby. I mean, they can deal with a one-man TMO, same in cricket. One man, a TMO, or whatever you want to call them. Why do we need a VAR and an assistant VAR and an assistant to the assistant VAR? Heavens above, why could we not have one man at the ground? Because all the material is there. The games are televised. Most games are televised, even though they may not be televised live, but they are being televised. So why not put one man up there in the gantry or wherever they have the replays and let the referee say, as they say in rugby, in my opinion, on-field decisions is a try. Is there any reason why I shouldn't do it? So likewise, in my opinion, it's a penalty kick. Is there any reason why I shouldn't give a penalty kick? And yellow card and red card and all the other things. One man, because the footage is available.
Well, let's talk about that, because obviously we have a VAR and we have an AVAR.
Yeah.
So let us take a game situation. So the game is going on, and we think that there's a penalty kick. At that point, the interrogation of that incident is by the VAR. The game continues whilst he and the technical man are looking at that possible penalty kick award. The AVAR, in addition to being responsible for offsides, is also then the pair of eyes continuing to look at the game in case there is another incident that takes place that requires a VAR intervention. That's why they operate with two. They operate also with a technician. Whereas, we've got a guy who's running the lines and running the replays and all that goes with it. I would think that if you could train people up that are competent in the use of pressing a replay button and the right level of equipment, you ought to be able to do that as the match official. So that's the reason why they have the VAR and the AVAR. The AVAR is the one that's actually majoring on offside decisions, but is also that second pair of eyes if the game continues whilst the VAR is reviewing an incident.
It just all seems very complicated, doesn't it? Because the video footage is there, and again, is there not a way? And I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here because it's almost like a rhetorical question. I almost know the answer, but it's nice for you to come and explain to the people who are watching. All the material is there, the video footage is there, and it's only a matter of making a decision on it. So I know the game is going on, and there are other guys looking at other things. Or am I being too simplistic about it? That as per rugby and as per cricket, and as per tennis, we could do it.
No, I think rugby has similarities to football, of course. But I think when we actually look at the situation, we're often having viewed it in open play with the television screens that we're watching. Then the interrogation takes place, and what is, I think, increasing the amount of time it takes is this forensic use of the extra cameras. So it's, can I have another camera angle? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it all seems to take longer than in rugby, because when we look at rugby and there's a touchdown and there's a crowd of players over the ball, then you see very quickly them showing you different viewing angles to determine whether the ball has been touched down correctly. I just think this is a matter of competence and the use of technology. And we've had 5 years at it, and we're still no better than day one, in my opinion. People will argue against that, but the reality is that if we take the Newcastle-Arsenal game, and I just recall the fact that the ball, was it in or out? It took a long time for them to review that little bit. We explained last week how the ball, a line and a sphere, and we made it clear how that view could be distorted. Then we went on to the push, which amazingly in this review by Howard Webb, he sort of said, well, there might be a push, but there's a split view on it in terms of match officials. And he tried to give a reasoning why the decision hadn't been given on what was a clear push. And then on a throwaway line, he said, well, yeah, there were 2 red cards, and moved on to the next game. Now, we've got Havertz, who did if you remember, the serious foul play challenge that they took no action on, and the illegal use of the elbow, which also went unpunished. But in this show that is supposed to give us an insight into how VAR operates with the communication, they didn't examine those 2 situations. I thought that was a pity, because it was a missed opportunity to be able to get over a vision of why it was serious foul play and why the other one was an act of violent conduct. And I think with those 2 examples, you had an ideal view of saying, look, everybody that's watching, fans and referees, this is what fulfills serious foul play. Excessive force, off the ground, 1 or 2 feet forward, out of control, landing area is not, it takes even a bit of the player or whatever. It's serious foul play, and therefore he glossed over it. But so I think that I go back to what should happen, in my view. I go back to the simple thing, that is a specialist panel of VAR operators. That's all they do. I like your idea that they're in the ground and not at this new palace that's being constructed. They say they've spent £1 million on it. There's a gymnasium, there's resting areas. you can make people too comfortable.
But yeah, and for what reason though, Keith? Surely it's like going into a studio, they're going in to do a job, and they go off after that. Or do they actually stay there? Do they sleep there? Are they there all day? I mean, they're making decisions during the actual game, the 90 minutes. So it's not as if they're doing replays afterwards and they're looking through footage, etc., etc. So what is the purpose of this new, was it Mark Halsey said, the futuristic VAR hub with a pool table and a massage area? And I think it was Mark also said it was more like a holiday camp than a place of work.
Well, I think he's right. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm thinking, look, I'm all for a reasonable environment, but this is like 5-star. I mean, it's not, you look at it and you think that's a lot of money that needed to be spent in other quarters. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that money, in my opinion, should have been spent on the development and training and improvement of the decision-making process. Because if anybody who has an inkling of understanding of this game of ours that we love, it's a disease, and they say they're happy with VAR, no. So that I go back to that specialist role. I definitely want AI. And the reason I want AI, artificial intelligence, the semi-automated system, offside system, the reason I want that is because it gives you a quicker decision.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Would it speed up the process?
Well, it will. What it will do is it will speed up and give a very accurate view in relation to the position of a player and an offside position. That's all it will do. It's then up to the match official. This is why it's semi-automated. It's then up to the match official under current offside law to then make a judgment as to whether he's active, whether there's interfering with an opponent, or whether there's gaining an advantage. And, and just clarifying that gaining advantage law, which confuses a lot of people, it only takes place when a player is in an offside position, a shot is played on goal, and it's either saved or hits a post and comes back to that player. That's when he's gained an advantage. That's when offside is given. So I think those are two simple things. I know down the line, in a couple of years, they'll change the offside law through experimentation, and they'll give the benefit of the doubt to the forward. And I think Arsene Wenger is pushing for that. He is a major voice on the FIFA side of the IFAB panel, and therefore I think I just think they'll change the offside law in the next couple of years.
The old one was that if you were level, you were offside.
Yes,
and then they changed that then to say that if you were level, you were onside, and then they moved on. They said you had to be, clearly offside to be flagged offside. So has that changed?
Yeah, because what we've seen is that we've seen with the introduction of VAR, no benefit of doubt to the forward at all. We've gone technical, absolutely technical, by using the broadcast cameras and the video lines through a computer. And this is why we're getting the toenail offside.
Yeah.
We've gone to the extreme. We've gone, one of the things I think with technology is it gives a lot of information. It's how you use it. And I feel that we're trying to sanitize the game. And what we've got at the moment is with match officials is a fear factor. And there, it seems to me that the default position is to actually rule out a goal on every possibility, if that's the meaning. But for me, I think that I just don't see any improvement. I listen to people in the game, the playing side, the managing side. Look, these managers will always moan, but I've never seen such a volume of managers that are all saying the same thing. You've even got Neil Warnock coming out with a list of suggestions of what he thinks, because he's saying he wants a specialist panel of VAR operators, but he also wants managers and ex-managers, ex-players to be on that panel. Well, it doesn't matter who's on the panel, in my opinion, providing, one, they understand thoroughly the laws of the game, and two, the outcome is an accurate decision.
When Howard Webb was appointed, and by the way, he was appointed, wasn't he? It wasn't open competition. You couldn't apply for the job. He was just selected and appointed. And
yeah,
seems a strange one. But not to say that he's underqualified. Absolutely, he's not former World Cup referee, but you're a little bit disappointed in the progress that he has made or is making with the people at his disposal.
Yeah,
and again, we want to say, and I always, that we're certainly not here to criticize referees, but people are asking these questions, and I want to use this program as a platform to allow people to express their opinions and their satisfaction or dissatisfaction. And I'm saying that to you out there. Please send in your questions, your comments, whatever you want to do, but at all times be respectful. And Keith and I have been around the block once or twice, so we're not here to criticize our colleagues, current or past, but these questions are being asked, and it's important that they get answered. Sorry, Keith, for interrupting you.
Well, of course, I mean, Howard had a reasonably long spell as boss of Pro, the similar organization that was set up to supply referees to the MLS. And I think he inherited that job from Peter Walton. And I was right in at the ground floor of the organization in America by giving them a thorough insight into how the PGMOL was operating. I was the boss then. And they offered me the role. And I didn't want to live in New York, but that's a long story. Peter Walton took that job. I would have liked Peter to have been the boss of the PGMOL, taking over from me. But it was an open interview process with the PGMOL at that time, and Mike Riley was appointed. Look, I think from Howard Webb's point of view, I think he's missing a lot of things. I think that I was surprised that announcements of the appointment of the manager of the select group, the guy in charge of the active referees at the Premier League, was appointed prior to him arriving. That was John Moss. We then had the announcement of Martin Atkinson being the coach on that organisation.
So just on that, just for clarification, Keith, John Moss actually makes the appointments, does he, for the Premier League game?
Well, let me tell you, I wouldn't have allowed that to happen.
But is that what's actually happening now?
I think that if you're the pilot of an aircraft, you're in control, and everybody's a subordinate to you, and you expect your team to apply what you're trying, the outcomes that are best for you. That's with a plane getting to the destination safely. With refereeing, you've got to have the same. This is no different. You have a manager of a football club, and he has lots of technical staff and coaching, but he ultimately is the one that sits on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday evening explaining why his team's won or lost. And he's the guy who pencils in, hopefully, the guys who are going to play that particular day. And I believe that is the role for Howard Webb. Howard Webb's role is he makes the appointments, no one else. And I'm very clear on that, because it's you that it's in his position. He's going to determine which referee referees which particular match. And he is the guy that sits across the table and says to the guy, you're not performing well, you're not getting appointments next week. I think you have to be that clear with the role. So he's inherited a lot of people that were already there. And let's make it clear. In my opinion, it was an oil tanker that was likely to run into a Titanic iceberg because it wasn't performing. So they had a review at the Premier League, and they went out and they secured the services of Howard. I think he was probably, apart from Pierluigi Collina, probably the best guy for the role, and I had great expectations. He's been in that role a year, and I don't know if he's got the freedom or not. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if he hasn't got the freedom to make the decisions under a budget, then he's accepted a job that I wouldn't accept. And I feel that when I ran the organization, we had a small management team. That team has grown. So there's a CEO of the organization, and there's other people. Now, I think that those decisions might have been made to free up Howard's role on one-to-ones with referees, one-to-one with managers or anything, to just concentrate on that refereeing bit. And then to do this media program with VAR. Well, even in America, he didn't do that program in America. That's Craig Barkey. So to answer the question, I'm disappointed. I do think that I would have liked to have seen more changes, better performances. But, I just want to mention one thing. In recent weeks, I've witnessed the performances of a referee I don't know, Simon Borrett. And this young referee has come on. He's done 4 or 5 games on the bounce on the Premier League. He's done them very efficiently and refereed extremely well. So there are referees out there that should be replacing others. And I get back to, Anthony Taylor, who is a good referee. He lives in Altrincham. And I'm still, I listen to what fans say. They're not happy with an Altrincham referee refereeing Manchester teams. Now, I've explained to someone in recent weeks, when David Ellery was a schoolmaster at Arrow School, he refereed Chelsea and Everton and Tottenham, and he was in the London area, and I appointed him to those games. So, on one side, there's this argument, it's too close. That's how it is now, and we have to live with it.
I got similar situations in South Africa where I always, when I was appointing referees, I always try and make sure that they were neutral and seemed to be neutral. In other words, that they weren't from Johannesburg if they were refereeing the likes of Kaizer Chiefs or Black Morocco Swallows, and maybe from Cape Town, bring guys in from outside when there are 2 big games like that. But on the other hand, and on the basis that a referee, no matter if he lives next door to the team, is what's the word? He's supposed to be fair, unbiased, and impartial, regardless of which team he's refereeing and where that team comes from. And if they come from next door, well, then he's going to be impartial anyway, because that's refereeing.
Yeah.
That's a good argument for you and I as referees, but for the perception of the general public, it's not a good argument, because they immediately see proximity and, he's going to favor this team, he's going to favor that team,
Yeah. I mean, I think it is an issue. I don't think it's a major issue now. It was in the early stages. But I think that when we look, the argument, the foundation of my argument is that if in a game of a type of Newcastle v Arsenal, and you have a very experienced referee now in Stuart Atwell, and you have a VAR in Andy Madley, and in that game they say the push is not a push, then that's an opinion. I disagree with them 100%. Then we go into the 2 red card challenges, which their boss is indicating should have been red, and they didn't give it. we've got two very experienced referees looking at two decisions, and for heaven's sake, how can they miss the Havertz challenge? How can they justify not saying that's not serious foul play? When they look at the elbow, the illegal use of the elbow on the other one, then they've come to a conclusion that that's not violent conduct. Now, I think that needs examining further. And part of that is that guy who's the VAR operator saying that it's not clear and obvious? Is the referee saying, I'm going to be lenient? You know, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I worry about referees trying to be too friendly with the clubs that they're refereeing.
100%.
And
they're far too friendly, if that's the word, almost cozying up to players. Well, I absolutely hate seeing a player goes down injured and the referee's going over to the player as if it's his son. Are you all right, son?
Yeah.
Just talk to the guy. Do you need assistance? Do you not need assistance? Maybe that's too cold. I don't know. You need assistance? Call on the trainer. If you don't need it, okay, let's get on with it. They're far almost key. You see that you have the same thing on the touchline with the assistant referee and sometimes the fourth official having nice casual conversations with the officials of the teams. Now, probably in South Africa, that would create all kinds of negative perceptions. And as soon as the next decision goes against that team, oh, well, you saw he was and another big bugbear I have, and I know my friend Declan King down in Cork is looking in, and he's on at me all the time about this. Referees taking a drink from the team's drink bottles. Why in heaven's name are they doing that? The perception that creates.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as the decision goes against them or for that team, the other team will say, or the supporters, oh, well, look, he was taking a drink from, you know, why did they do that? My goodness.
Well, I'll give you an example of that. I was out in Mexico, in Leon, and I was the referee with a group of referees for the FIFA Junior World Cup or whatever it was called. And there was a referee who was a very good referee, Rolf Eriksson. He was from Sweden. He was a marathon runner and very knowledgeable about sports science. And we were at this particular game. I was sat with the match delegate because I was on the next game, not this particular one. And during the course of the game, Rolf went to the touchline and took a drink. And the match delegate said to me, that is not acceptable. And I can tell you that Rolf Eriksson was sent home after that particular incident. So
who did he take the drink from?
He took a drink from his own bottle that he'd put on the touchline. So I just yeah, well, that's how FIFA at that particular time saw it. But yeah, I think this whole question of familiarity is you know, you're a policeman, and I think that if you measure up, at times policemen have some difficult jobs to do, referees have difficult jobs to do. And, you know, you touched on a subject earlier. Once you've given a yellow card, what do you say to the player? I thought it was a really interesting question. First of all,
because I've seen it happen so many times. And just for those people who heard, we spoke about this off air. And the question was, would you talk to a player or warn a player after you've given a yellow card when the next one should really be red?
Well, let me say, I think there's a step process that I always used to say, and that is you can always have the quiet word before the yellow card. You can have a quiet word on the fly, and you can have more public words. But it would never be the next time you do this, I'm going to do that. It's always, and the phrase that I like referees to use is one I learned from rugby, and that is, I want an improvement. Nothing else. Look at a player, I want an improvement. And I encourage referees in terms of the body language and facial expressions. We can all smile and we can all frown and we can all look displeased. And I encourage young referees to get in front of a mirror and start playing around with their facial expressions, because talking to players is usually like talking to a wooden top. I'm being disrespectful to players, but they're not going to listen. They just don't listen. And if you look at the facts are, as I understand it with body language, 55% of the visual is absorbed and recognized. Only 7% of the communication verbally lands and has a response. So hence, facial expressions and body language. Once you've given a yellow card, right, look slightly firm and annoyed. Don't be friendly. You know, these guys who wave the yellow cards to crowds, we've talked about it before. Look at the person, make certain he's looking at you, and then show him the yellow card. Don't thrust it on his nose, thrust it high, and then look pretty firm.
And absolutely don't let the player walk away when he's being cautioned.
That's the warning.
Turning his back on it. Oh, gee.
I mean, that's the warning. That's the yellow card's the warning.
Yeah.
What do you want to say to him afterwards? Oh, by the way, the next one's red.
And the very reason yellow and red cards were brought on in the first place, so you don't have to talk to players.
Yeah. So for me, once I've given a yellow card, the communication is at a very low level.
Yeah.
Because, you know, even moving into the zone of that player and having a quiet word can give the impression to the fan, he's given a yellow card, he's now getting away with it. Yeah. Look, the referee's trying to be friendly with him. Yeah. No, be firm. A yellow card is a warning. It's you're unhappy with the behavior of that particular player, either for a technical misconduct or a reckless challenge. After a reckless challenge, you don't have to say to the guy, do it again. If he doesn't know that if he does it again, he's going to get a red. And
actually, a yellow card is his last chance because next one's red.
Yeah. Well, look at, I mean,
should be aware.
Well, the frustration sometimes is that you see a referee give a yellow card to one player for a challenge.
Yeah.
And a player on a yellow card makes a similar challenge and he gets away with it.
Yeah.
It's that's the, if you want to get on in refereeing, one of the things you have to be is consistent.
Yeah. And that's a lot of fans' complaints are about, is the lack of consistency.
Yeah.
And who can blame them, because you get that sort of thing.
So visual expression.
Yeah. Keith, as always, thank you very much again. And thank all of you out there for tuning in. We'll do it all again next Monday. There hasn't been much happening this week because of the internationals. I'm sure there'll be lots happening this week when the Premier League comes back up and running. Until then, until 9 o'clock, or sorry, beg your pardon, 8 o'clock next Monday, same time, same place. Thanks again, Keith.
Thank you. Bye.